Section 3, the work of our sanctification. How much more easily sanctity appears when regarded from this point of view. If the work of our sanctification presents, apparently, the most insurmountable difficulties, it is because we do not know how to form a just idea of it. In reality, sanctity can be reduced to one single practice: fidelity to the duties appointed by God. Now, this fidelity is equally within each one's power, whether in its active practice or passive exercise. The active practice of fidelity consists in accomplishing the duties which devolve upon us, whether imposed by the general laws of God and of the Church, or by the particular state that we may have embraced. Its passive exercise consists in the loving acceptance of all that God sends us at each moment. Are either of these practices of sanctity above our strength? Certainly not the active fidelity, since the duties it imposes cease to be duties when we have no longer the power to fulfill them. If the state of your health does not permit you to go to Mass, you are not obliged to go. The same rule holds good for all the precepts laid down, that is to say, for all those which prescribe certain duties. Only those which forbid things evil in themselves are absolute, because it is never allowable to commit sin. Can there then be anything more reasonable? What excuse can be made? Yet this is all that God requires of the soul for the work of its sanctification. He exacts it from both high and low, from the strong and the weak. In a word, from all, always and everywhere. It is true then that He requires on our part only simple and easy things, since it is only necessary to employ this simple method to attain to an eminent degree of sanctity. If, over and above the commandments, He shows us the counsels as a more perfect aim, He always takes care to suit the practice of them to our position and character. He bestows on us, as the principal sign of our vocation, to follow them, the attractions of grace, which make them easy. He never impels anyone beyond his strength, nor in any way beyond his aptitude. Again, what could be more just? All you who strive after perfection, and who are tempted to discouragement at the remembrance of what you have read in the lives of the saints, and of what certain pious books prescribe, O you who are appalled by the terrible ideas of perfection that you have formed for yourselves, it is for your consolation that God has willed me to write this. Learn that of which you seem to be ignorant. This God of all goodness has made those things easy, which are common and necessary in the order of nature, such as breathing, eating, and sleeping. No less necessary in the supernatural order are love and fidelity. Therefore, it must needs be that the difficulty of acquiring them is by no means so great as is generally represented. Review your life. Is it not composed of innumerable actions of very little importance? Well, God is quite satisfied with these. They are the share that the soul must take in the work of its perfection. This is so clearly explained in Holy Scripture that there can be no doubt about it. Fear God and keep the commandments. This is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:13. That is to say, this is all that is required on the part of man, and it is in this that active fidelity consists. If man fulfills his part, God will do the rest. Grace being bestowed only on this condition, the marvels it effects are beyond the comprehension of man. For neither ear has heard, nor eye seen, nor has it entered the mind what things God has planned in His omniscience, determined in His will, and carried out by His power in the souls given up entirely to Him. The passive part of sanctity is still more easy, since it only consists in accepting that which we very often have no power to prevent, and in suffering lovingly, that is to say, with sweetness and consolation, those things that too often cause weariness and disgust. Once more I repeat, in this consists sanctity. This is the grain of mustard, seed which is the smallest of all seeds, the fruits of which can neither be recognized nor gathered. It is the drachma of the gospel, the treasure that none discover because they suppose it to be too far away to be sought. Do not ask me how this treasure can be found. It is no secret. The treasure is everywhere. It is offered to us at all times and wherever we may be. All creatures, both friends and enemies, pour it out with prodigality, and it flows like a fountain through every faculty of the body and soul, even to the very center of our hearts. If we open our mouths, they will be filled. The divine activity permeates the whole universe. It pervades every creature. Wherever they are, it is there. It goes before them, with them, and it follows them. All they have to do is to let the waves bear them on. Would to God that kings and their ministers, princes of the church and of the world, priests and soldiers, the peasantry and laborers, in a word, all men, could know how very easy it would be for them to arrive at a high degree of sanctity. They would only have to fulfill the simple duties of Christianity and of their state of life, to embrace with submission the crosses belonging to that state, and to submit with faith and love to the designs of Providence in all those things that have to be done or suffered without going out of their way to seek occasions for themselves. This is the spirit by which the patriarchs and prophets were animated and sanctified before they were so many systems of so many masters of the spiritual life. This is the spirituality of all ages and of every state. No state of life can, assuredly, be sanctified in a more exalted manner, nor in a more wonderful and easy way than by the simple use of the means that God, the sovereign director of souls, gives them to do or to suffer at each moment. It would be a mistaken idea of the meaning of the author to imagine that he would urge anyone to undertake to lead a spiritual life without the guidance of a director. He explains expressly elsewhere that in order to be able to do without a director, one must have been habitually and for a long time under direction. Less still does he endeavor to bring into disrepute the means made use of by the Church for the extirpation of vice and the acquisition of virtue. His meaning, of which Christians cannot be too often reminded, is that of all direction the best is that of divine providence, and that the most necessary and the most sanctifying of all practices is that of fulfilling faithfully and accepting lovingly whatever this paternal providence ordains that we should do or suffer. Abandonment to Divine Providence, Section 4, in what perfection consists. Perfection consists in doing the will of God, not in understanding His designs. The designs of God, the good pleasure of God, the will of God, the operation of God, and the gift of His grace are all one and the same thing in the spiritual life. It is God working in the soul to make it like unto Himself. Perfection is neither more nor less than the faithful cooperation of the soul with this work of God, and has begun, grows, and is consummated in the soul unperceived and in secret. The science of theology is full of theories and explanations of the wonders of this state in each soul according to its capacity. One may be conversant with all these speculations, speak and write about them admirably, instruct others, and guide souls. Yet, if these theories are only in the mind, one is, compared with those who, without any knowledge of these theories, receive the meaning of the designs of God and do His holy will like a sick physician compared to simple people in perfect health. The designs of God and His divine will, accepted by a faithful soul with simplicity, produces this divine state in it, without its knowledge, just as a medicine taken obediently will produce health, although the sick person neither knows nor wishes to know anything about medicine. As the fire gives out heat, and not philosophical discussions about it, nor knowledge of its effects, so the designs of God and His holy will work in the soul for its sanctification, and not speculations of curiosity as to this principle and this state. When one is thirsty, one quenches one's thirst by drinking, not by reading books which treat of the condition. The desire to know does but increase this thirst. Therefore, when one thirsts after sanctity, the desire to know about it only drives it further away. Speculation must be laid aside, and everything arranged by God as regards actions and sufferings must be accepted with simplicity, for those things that happen at each moment by the divine command or permission are always the most holy, the best, and the most divine for us. Section 5. The divine influence alone can sanctify us. No reading nor any other exercise can sanctify us except insofar as they are the channels of the divine influence. Our whole science consists in recognizing the designs of God for the present moment. All reading not intended for us by God is dangerous. It is by doing the will of God and obeying His holy inspirations that we obtain grace. And this grace works in our hearts through our reading or any other employment. Apart from God, reading is empty and vain, and being deprived for us of the life-giving power of the action of God only succeeds in emptying the heart by the very fullness it gives to the mind. This divine will, working in the soul of a simple, ignorant girl by means of sufferings and actions of a very ordinary nature, produces a state of supernatural life without the mind being filled with self-exalting ideas. Whereas the proud man who studies spiritual books merely out of curiosity receives no more than the dead letter into his mind, and the will of God having no connection with his reading, his heart becomes ever harder and more withered. The order established by God and His divine will are the life of the soul, no matter in what way they work or are obeyed. Whatever connection the divine will has with the mind, it nourishes the soul and continuously enlarges it by giving it what is best for it at every moment. It is neither one thing nor another which produces these happy effects, but what God has willed for each moment. What was best for the moment that has passed is so no longer, because it is no longer the will of God, which, becoming apparent through other circumstances, brings to light the duty of the present moment. It is this duty, under whatever guise it presents itself, which is precisely that which is the most sanctifying for the soul. If, by the divine will, it is a present duty to read, then reading will produce the destined effect in the soul. If it is the divine will that reading be relinquished for contemplation, then this will perform the work of God in the soul, and reading would become useless and prejudicial. Should the divine will withdraw the soul from contemplation for the hearing of confessions or etc., and that even for some considerable time, this duty becomes the means of uniting the soul with Jesus Christ, and all the sweetness of contemplation would only serve to destroy this union. Our moments are made fruitful by our fulfillment of the will of God. This is presented to us in countless different ways by the present duty which forms, increases, and consummates in us the new man until we attain the plenitude destined for us by the divine wisdom. This mysterious attainment of the age of Jesus Christ in our souls is the end ordained by God and the fruit of His grace and of His divine goodness. This fruit, as we have already said, is produced, nourished, and increased by the performance of those duties which become successfully present and which are made fruitful by the same divine will. In fulfilling these duties, we are always sure of possessing the better part, because this holy will is itself the better part. It only requires to be allowed to act, and that we should abandon ourselves blindly to it with perfect confidence. It is infinitely wise, powerful, and amiable to those who trust themselves unreservedly to it, who love and seek it alone, and who believe with an unshaken faith and confidence that whatever it arranges for each moment is best, without seeking elsewhere for more or less, and without pausing to consider the connection of these exterior works with the plans of God. This would be the refinement of self-love. Nothing is essential, real, or of any value unless ordained by God, who arranges all things and makes them useful to the soul. Apart from this divine will, all is hollow, empty, null. There is nothing but falsehood, vanity, nothingness, death. The will of God is the salvation, health, and life of body and soul, no matter to what subject it is applied. One must not, therefore, scrutinize too closely the suitability of things to mind or body in order to form a judgment of their value, because this is of little importance.